Clara had buried that name 6 years ago, until a little girl ran across a marble ballroom floor, arms wide, screaming the one word that could get them both killed. Clara Bennett scrubbed the same spot on the counter for the third time, not because it was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do besides shake. 3 years in the Kang household had taught her the rhythm of survival. Eyes down, voice low, never linger in a room longer than the task required. The staff quarters smelled of bleach and instant coffee. Above her, 6 floors up, lived a man whose name made grown bodyguards lower their voices. Kang Soo-won didn't raise his voice either. He didn't need to. He stood at his penthouse window in Seoul's Gangnam district, watching the city lights blur, a glass of untouched whiskey sweating in his hand. Downstairs, his 7-year-old daughter Mira was supposed to be asleep. She wasn't. She never was, not since her mother died, a fact the household staff whispered about but never asked him directly, because men like Soo-won did not answer questions about their dead wives. Clara heard small feet on the marble before she saw her. Mira stood in the kitchen doorway in pajamas printed with stars, clutching a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. "Can't sleep," the girl said simply, climbing onto a stool like she'd done it 100 times before. She had. Clara just never let anyone see it. "Your father will be looking for you," Clara said carefully, reaching for the milk. Mira's eyes, Soo-won's eyes, sharp and dark, softened only around Clara. "He's always looking at the window instead." Down the hall, a door opened, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, the walk of a man who owned every room he entered. Clara's whole body went still. If you had to hide who you really were to protect the people you love most, how far would you go? Drop your answer below before we continue. Mira didn't stop running, not when the room went silent, not when 3 visiting elders from the Choi family turned from their negotiations, not when her father's jaw tightened like stone. "Mommy?" The word hit the marble floor and shattered every carefully built wall in that room. Clara froze mid-step, the serving tray trembling in her hands. Every eye turned to her, the elders, the guards, Soo-won's most of all. His face didn't move, but his knuckles went white around his glass. "She's confused," Clara said quickly, kneeling, pulling Mira's small hands from around her waist. "I'm sorry, sir. She's just the help," Soo-won said. Flat, cold, loud enough for the room, quiet enough to feel like a blade. "Take her upstairs." The elders exchanged glances, the kind that meant questions would follow later, in rooms Clara wasn't allowed into. Mira's lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She just looked at Clara with an expression too old for a 7-year-old. "You said we don't lie." Clara's throat closed. She lifted the girl anyway, carrying her from the room, while Soo-won's stare followed her out. Unreadable. Dangerous. Behind her, one of the Choi elders leaned towards Soo-won, voice low. "That woman. Where did you find her?" Soo-won didn't answer, but his eyes, for the first time in 3 years, held something Clara had never seen directed at her. Recognition and fear. ACT 3. Resistance. Clara didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of Mira's bed long after the girl drifted off, replaying the moment, calculating exits the way she used to. Before this house, before this name, before Clara Bennett had been the only safe thing to call herself. A knock, not a guard's knock, his. Soo-won stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled, tie gone. "Explain it," he said. "Now. She's a child. Children attached to whoever tucks them in. 3 years. And she's never called Miss Park that, never called her own aunt that." His voice stayed level, but his eyes weren't. "Who are you? Really?" Clara held his gaze the way she'd trained herself to. Steady, empty, safe. "I'm the maid, Mr. Kang, nothing more. The Choi family doesn't believe that. And when they don't believe something, they investigate it." He stepped closer. "If they find out something before I do, it won't just cost you your job." Clara's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what the Choi family did to loose ends. "Then let it go," she said, quieter than she meant to. "For her sake, for yours." Soo-won's jaw flexed. For a moment, something almost human crossed his face. Not the boss, not the widower, just a man staring at a locked door he suddenly, desperately wanted open. "I don't let things go," he said. "It's how I've survived this long." He left without another word. Clara sat back down beside Mira, hands finally shaking. Somewhere below, a car pulled into the compound. Uninvited. The gunfire started at 2:14 a.m. Clara heard it before the alarms did. 3 sharp cracks from the east gate, followed by shouting in Korean and the screech of tires. She was already moving, scooping Mira from her bed before the girl fully woke. "Clara, what's—" "Don't talk. Hold on to me." The hallway lights cut out. Emergency lighting flickered red along the floor as guards sprinted past, weapons drawn. Clara pulled Mira into the panic room behind the library, a space she'd memorized on her second week here, back when she was still mapping every exit out of habit, not paranoia. The door hadn't locked before Suwon burst in behind them, blood on his sleeve that wasn't his, gun still in hand. He slammed the door, threw the bolt, and for a long moment just breathed. "Choi's men," he said finally. "They weren't here for the shipment." Clara's blood went cold. "They were here for me." Suwon looked at her, really looked, the way he had in the ballroom, and something in his expression cracked open. "Then it's time you told me the truth. All of it. Because I can't protect what I don't understand." Mira, pressed between them, whispered into the silence, "Is Mommy going to leave now?" Neither adult answered. Outside the door, the shooting stopped. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, checking every room. Clara's hand found Suwon's sleeve without thinking. "If they get in here, they won't." He said it like a vow he intended to keep with his life. "Would you tell the truth if it put the people you love in danger? Or protect them with a lie a little longer? Tell me what you'd do in the comments." The footsteps faded. Suwon didn't move from the door for 10 full minutes, gun trained, until a guard's voice, coded, confirmed safe, came through the wall. Only then did he turn to Clara. "Talk." She held Mira tighter, but the girl had finally fallen back asleep against her shoulder, exhausted past fear. Clara's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. 7 years ago, I was a nurse. Private contract, off the books. The kind of job you take when you need to disappear from your own life for a while. She swallowed. I was assigned to a woman in labor. Complications. The hospital said there wasn't time to transfer her. Suwon's face went pale in the red emergency light. Suwa. I didn't know whose wife she was until the Choi men showed up at the safe house an hour after the birth, looking for anyone who'd witnessed what really happened that night. Your wife didn't die from complications, Mr. Kang. She was poisoned. Slowly. By someone inside her own family who wanted the alliance broken before the baby came. The glass in Suwon's hand hit the floor. I got Mira out through a service exit before they found us. I've been running ever since. New name, new city, new life, until I ran out of places to hide, and this job was the only one that would take someone with no real papers. You saved her, Suwon said, voice breaking for the first time in 3 years. You saved my daughter, and I called you the help. Clara's eyes filled. You didn't know. I should have. Mira stirred against her shoulder, murmuring the word she'd been saying all along, the one that had never been confusion at all. Mommy. They stayed in the panic room until dawn, the compound finally quiet, guards sweeping the grounds for anything the Choi men left behind. Mira slept between them on the narrow cot, one small hand fisted in Clara's shirt, the other reaching, even in sleep, toward her father. Suwon sat against the wall, elbows on his knees, watching them both like a man relearning how to breathe. She has your laugh, he said quietly. Suwon's laugh. I used to think I imagined it. She has your eyes, Clara said. I used to have to look away from her sometimes. It hurt too much, seeing him in her, seeing you, knowing I could never tell you why. Why didn't you leave? After you got her here safely, you could have disappeared completely. Clara looked down at the sleeping girl. I told myself it was because a 7-year-old shouldn't lose the only mother she remembers twice. But it wasn't just that. Her voice cracked slightly. I couldn't leave either of you. Not really. Not once I let myself feel it. Suwon reached across the small space, not for Mira this time, but for Clara's hand. His fingers were steady despite everything. 3 years, and I built a wall around this house to keep danger out. I never once thought the person keeping us both safe was standing in my kitchen every night. I was scared, Clara admitted. Every single day. So was I, Suwon said. I just called it control instead. For the first time since the shooting started, something in the room felt like peace. Fragile, stolen, but real. It didn't last. 3 days later, a man named Detective Han arrived at the gate, flashing credentials and a photograph. Clara's photograph. From 7 years ago. From the night everything started, Suwon met him in the main hall, Clara watching from the stairs, blood draining from her face as Han spoke loud enough for the whole house to hear. This woman is wanted for questioning in an unsolved poisoning case. Suwon Kang. Your late wife, Mr. Kang. Han's eyes flicked up the staircase. Funny thing, the last person seen with her that night matches this photo exactly. The room turned to Clara. Even the guards who'd protected her for 3 years now looked at her differently. You knew, Suwon said, turning on her. Voice low and dangerous in a way she'd never heard, directed at her before. You knew there was a warrant. You let my daughter call a fugitive her mother. I was protecting her. Protecting both of you. By lying to my face for 3 years? By keeping her alive. Clara's voice broke. The Choi family poisoned your wife because I was there. Because I could identify who did it. I ran because staying meant Mira dying too. Everything I did for her. Then why not tell me the moment you knew I could protect you? Because I didn't know if I could trust you not to hand me over the second it became politically convenient. Silence detonated between them. Suwon's face closed like a door. Take her to the East Wing, under guard, until I decide what's true. Mira's scream, "No! Daddy, no!" echoed down the marble hallway as 2 guards led Clara away. The East Wing room had 1 window, bars behind the glass, and nothing but silence for 6 hours. Clara sat on the floor, back against the cold wall, replaying every version of the truth she could have told sooner. Somewhere above her, she imagined Mira crying herself to sleep without her, and the thought hollowed her out worse than any threat the Choi family had ever made. A guard's radio crackled outside. Footsteps. The door unlocked. Not a guard. Suwon, alone, holding a folder thick with documents. Hospital records, old case files, a signed statement from someone Clara hadn't seen in 7 years. Detective Han pulled the original case files, Suwon said quietly. Everything matches your story. The poison, the timeline, the Choi family's fingerprints, all over an investigation that got quietly buried the same week you disappeared. Clara looked up, afraid to hope. You checked. I spent 6 hours confirming what my daughter already knew the moment she saw you 3 years ago. He crouched down to her level, something raw and unguarded in his face. I was so afraid of losing control of this family, I almost lost the only 2 people who ever made it feel like a home instead of a war. What happens now? Clara asked, voice barely a whisper. Suwon extended his hand, not as her employer, not as a man deciding her fate, but as an equal. Now I make a call. The Choi family won't survive ignoring. And you stop hiding. Both of you. Clara took his hand, and for the first time in 7 years, she let herself believe safety wasn't a lie she told a child to help her sleep. 3 weeks later, the same ballroom that once witnessed Clara's humiliation now held the entire Kang family council. Elders, allies, and the Choi representatives, summoned under a truce neither side dared break. Suwon stood at the center, Mira's small hand in his, Clara beside them both, not in a uniform this time, but in navy silk that made no apology for who she was. 7 years ago, Suwon said, his voice carrying across the silent room the way it had the night he dismissed her. Someone in this alliance poisoned my wife and tried to erase the one witness brave enough to save my daughter's life. His eyes swept the Choi delegation, cold and final. That woman has spent 7 years hiding from people who should have been protecting her. That ends today. Gasps rippled through the room as guards moved, not toward Clara, but toward the Choi elder who'd first questioned her name in that same ballroom weeks ago. Mira looked up at Clara, squeezing her hand. You don't have to whisper it anymore, right? Clara knelt, tears finally falling freely. Never again. Mommy, Mira said, loud, unafraid, echoing the word that started everything. Suwon pulled them both close, right there in front of the entire council. The same room, the same silence, but nothing else the same. Later, alone on the balcony, Suwon turned to Clara. I called you the help once. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure the world knows exactly what you really are. Somewhere below, a car with no plates idled at the gate. Watching, waiting, unclaimed. Some debts, Clara knew, were never fully paid. If this story gripped your heart, hit like, subscribe for more emotional stories like this every week. And tell me, did you see that twist coming? Comment below.